Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Reckoning of Roku chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 23, which is called Terrifying and Tempting. Once again, YouTube channel membership is enabled on the channel. If you want to help support the channel, click the join button. Also, subscribing does help. But let's jump into this very interesting chapter. We're with Roku once again, so we know we're in this kind of cave system, the labyrinth of caves that lead into the sacred cave underground, but Roku doesn't know where he's heading. That's where he slipped and fell into, and now it's about what's he going to encounter, and we get some really interesting stuff as finally Roku meets some natives. Roku discovers the real kind of prize to be found on the island, and we'll get into some really cool details here. So there's actually quite a lot to highlight from this chapter because it's like our first time getting rather direct confirmation and exploration of some of this stuff here. So we start off, he's thinking of course about, last chapter of course was about remembering what happened to Yasu, and he's thinking about the traditional Fire Nation condolence that you offer when the name of someone who died gets brought up. You say, "May their flame light our way." And he notes that his family, a lot of the nobles in the Fire Nation, have not been spiritual much in recent days, but he's sort of been drawn back to wanting to say something like that, using a little bit of spirituality. May Yasu's flame light our way type thing. And he very much thinks that here because one of the last things his brother said to him was kind of like criticizing his sense of direction. And then when he remembered that, he had an instinct to go in a specific direction. And it's the idea that Yasu, to a certain degree, is lighting Roku's way, because Roku is heading in the right direction here. Now, there's another reason he's heading in this direction, and that is that he's noticing the thrumming in his spirit. The energy within him is sort of beginning to grow as he heads in this direction further inwards towards the sacred cave. Now, he doesn't know he's heading towards the sacred cave, but that's what's happening here. So some minor notes in the background about the idea that he notes that these are ancient lava tubes, and it's very similar to other Fire Island kind of architecture and stuff like that he's seen before in tunnel systems. But yes, once again, it's this idea of his bending is more efficient, it's more powerful. For whatever reason, the closer he gets, the more he gets this sense that something's happening to his bending, but he's also being drawn towards this energy source. So that's why he's heading in this direction here. He eventually finds his way to the sacred cave. So he waits on the kind of cave that leads into the actual sacred cave, and it's noted that this is a giant cavern. It's big enough to, what does it say here? It's large enough to hold the royal palace in it. So it's a pretty big kind of cave opening here. The light comes through the top, of course, through the island, kind of highlighting that there are kind of like pathways down, hence what Roku sort of fell through to get down here. And again, lava flows all over the place, but also veined with black ore that had a red sheen to it. So the other kind of resource on this island, the other thing that people are after on this island is that metal ore. But of course, the other thing is enhanced bending on the island, and that's also present here in this cave. So it's described here that for Roku to get down into the cavern, he'd have to drop down a little bit to get to the floor of the cavern. But that in the center of the cavern is this kind of hill, is this mound right in the middle, and there are three people dancing on top of that mound together in unison. And so as he approaches, he realizes it's two older women and one younger man. And he notes what they're wearing first, and then he discovers what exactly they are doing. So it's described here. The women wore tolgay skirts, and the man was in a wano loincloth. So very much, once again, the idea of these traditional, older style Fire Island clothing. That says here, but it had been hundreds, if not thousands of years since any clan in the Fire Nation had dressed like that outside of historical reenactments or theater performances. So once again, you are being led to very much believe that this island, separating itself from the rest of the world, has been like this for thousands of years. That if actual Fire Nation islands that are part of the proper Fire Nation haven't worn this stuff in hundreds, getting towards thousands of years. This truly isolated clan, we're really talking about thousands of years. And other stuff from later on in the book kind of suggests that this might go all the way back to Juan, theoretically, as we'll discuss. But that's obviously a major discussion point to be had about the book, is has this clan just been here since like Juan's time, is a very interesting idea. But yes, further adding to the connection, also Avatar Zalir, of course, being described as wearing the Tolgay skirt. And I think this is the first one of these I've recorded where we're referencing Avatar Zalir. Randy Rabai said and answered on Instagram that he views Zalir as being a pre-Four Nations avatar. Now, he said it's a headcanon, but I think that's very much most people's reading of the scene where her statue is described, and I think the author's intent kind of means a little bit in this situation. So, while it doesn't confirm exactly how far ago Zalir is, I'm guessing we're talking at least 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, because I think we basically have the idea that when we talk about pre-Four Nations, we are talking about over 4,000 years ago, because there seems to be some sense that in or around 4,000 years ago from Korra's time is roughly a time when it is considered this is the true formation of the modern Four Nations. But you know, there's lots of kind of weird stuff about the timeline stuff that we don't know about. But either way, the whole point is that they use this traditional clothing to highlight older Fire Nation history, Fire Island history, before nations. That's what you should be thinking about. But anyway, then he realizes, like, these aren't firebenders here. That what they're doing is very clearly waterbending forms. These are waterbenders dressed as long ago firebenders. How does this make any sense? But then he remembers, Tom Min said there are natives on this island. This must be my first time really seeing these natives. Also, he has read scrolls in the Dragonbone catacombs with Sozin and Yasu that says stuff about clans living on fire islands long ago. Some of them were supposedly communities where benders of different elements lived together peacefully. This must be such a clan, their ways unchanged over the centuries. And he thinks that, oh yeah, Owen was attacked by an airbender. That must confirm it for sure. They have multiple bending disciplines on this island. So lots of interesting stuff here as Roku's, getting the full extent of the discovery on this island happening right now. But he notes, okay, they're clearly doing waterbending forms, but they're not bending anything. I don't see any water moving. And he thinks, like, what are they doing here? Where is the water in all of this? I guess there's water in the air. And then he thinks, oh wait, the fog. This must explain the fog. These three waterbenders dancing here for who knows how long, they are the ones making the fog over this entire island. But then he addresses the sort of elephant in the room. Okay, three potentially powerful waterbenders. You can do some impressive stuff when benders work together. And he notes the idea. Firebenders can work together to create something like an enormous dragon that has a really cool large effect that we saw from like the early chapters of the book. He notes earthbenders can combine their energy to chuck colossal boulders through the air. Skilled waterbenders can conceal themselves by manipulating the moisture in the air to summon a temporary haze over a small area. But over an entire island for hours every day, basically, like for half of a day effectively, because we see that they're exhausted after they come back, because we saw these three waterbenders in the last Malaya chapter, or maybe the one before that. That's the interesting point here. He's kind of gradually building up to the kind of realization that there's like enhanced bending going on here, that it's not just three waterbenders, but it's three waterbenders enhanced. And he talks through it of like, Gyatso said he sensed something with the spiritual energy of the island, and now of course in the cave system Roku is absolutely feeling that, because he feels it so directly, because he's empowered himself, but he's not fully empowered because he's not in the cavern, and he's not in the sacred cave just yet. The feeling grew stronger the deeper he traveled into the tunnels, and even now something tugged at his energy, urging him towards the mound at the center of the cavern. So the center is where the highest power is available. That's super interesting. He figures out that, Okay. In the same way benders could combine their focus to work in concert and multiply their strength, maybe there was something on this island, this cavern, that magnified their bending strength even further. Rare sites existed all over the world where the borders between worlds were thin and spiritual energy flowed more readily. If this was such a place, then that might explain how 3 waterbenders could accomplish what should require hundreds. And that's the point here. 3 waterbenders creating fog over an entire island. Yeah, it should require a ton of waterbenders to make something like that happen, but only 3 are making it happen. Enhanced bending in action. This is proving some of the legends that that Sozin read about Asho to be true, and that this is actually possible. But the twist on it is, of course, it's limited to a location. You have to be here in the middle of the middle of the sacred cave to make any of this stuff happen. So what Sozin wants to happen, of like go in there, learn a technique and leave and bring back to the Fire Nation, can't actually happen. But then we get Roku half figuring things out, but then half getting some of it wrong because he doesn't have all of the information. He makes the assumption at this point that the earthbenders are not here for a rare rock or mineral, they're here for this power at the heart of the island here, this cave, and that this must be why the Earth King, and he still thinks the Earth King might be involved in this. This is why the Earth King is involved, why he's only sent like a small group here, because this way it won't draw as much attention, and we only need a couple of benders in the middle of this place to do a lot of damage. Because he thinks about it. If 3 waterbenders can create a fog over an entire island, imagine what a couple of powerful earthbenders could do using full power in the middle of this cave. He thinks about the idea that they could combine their strength to shake the earth, bury cities, sink islands, reshape entire continents. Roku shuddered. And that is the idea here. This is the danger to the world of this cavern, is that more and more people find out about it. You can imagine, to a certain degree, benders of any discipline going in there with an intent to do a lot of damage could do some absolutely crazy things. Of course, the potential for weather manipulation to create natural disasters from like air and water bending, as described here, the idea of earthbenders using kind of lava based things, just creating earthquakes, especially in the Fire Island chain. The damage they could do to other Fire Islands and the Fire Nation kind of mainland is kind of crazy to think about. Of course, Roku's wrong here that this is not actually what the earthbenders are here for. It is actually the ore. They don't know about this at all. So no one really is planning to misuse the energy of the island in that way. Yes, Sozin wants it, but he wants to take it back to the Fire Nation and give them a kind of power boost, broadly speaking. And I'm guessing, obviously it's going to eventually be poorly used, but Sozin doesn't obviously have the plan to, do some crazy stuff at the center of this island in terms of just attacking other cities. That's not where we're at with Sozin just yet, of course. That happens much later. So it's just interesting that the flow of information throughout the book of Roku just thinking this, and he's kind of half right, half wrong type situation. It's very, very interesting. But he figures out, this is what the natives must have known, is that this is why they hide the island. Outsiders can never know about this cave, otherwise they will want to use that power to their advantage. That's the whole idea. And he's thinking to himself here of like, oh yeah, Gyatso and Disham, in a way I've been proved right. I was right to go on this mission, because if I didn't, I would never have found out about this power source on the island and what it could be potentially used for in a bad way. And he's of course he's thinking he's going to stop the Earth Kingdom from shaking the world off balance, but it's not quite that. But you could see the idea from Roku, of course. And so he's just thinking to himself of like, I have to be more confident, I have to be a good avatar, I think I'm onto something here, I am going to be confident here. I'm going to go speak to the natives and sort this out. I'll find out about what's going on with the earthbenders and, sort this out peacefully and prevent this from becoming a major thing. I will prove myself as the Avatar. This is what he's trying to do. So he steps down into the cave, into the chamber, and immediately you get the sense of now all of a sudden here is full power energy boost from this cave. As soon as his foot touched the ground, energy crashed into his spirit like a wave. It roared through his body, coursing through his chi pathways. So desperate for release, it verged on painful. But unlike a wave, it did not pass and settle. Instead, it reverberated, making the thrumming Roku had felt earlier in the tunnels pale in comparison to this overwhelming sense of power. This sense that he could bend anything completely to his will, merely imagining the destruction he desired. Nobody could stop him, nobody could stand in his way, and he's thinking to himself, whoa, both good and bad in a way. Is this what it's like to use the Avatar state, like to have this much power at your command? And we sort of know from Yang Chen, and sort of what she sometimes deals with in the Avatar state, that to a certain degree, it is very much the case of like, you just have access to this incredible power source that no one else really does. It puts you towards the level of kind of being as close to a god as possible in the Avatar world. And it's hard to not think of what the power could be used for. But it obviously speaks to the idea of he can literally feel the amount of energy coursing through his body here. And it's pretty crazy. And this is the Avatar thinking that as well. So the idea is like, imagine how normal benders feel to a certain degree. So super interesting stuff there. He notes he had never desired power for the sake of power, but with a strength like this, he could be the Avatar the world needed, not after several years of training, but right now. So the power getting a little bit to his head here, but then he thinks to himself of like, no, that's not it. I'm not like glowing, I'm not in the Avatar state, I'm not flying, I'm still just me. There's just something going on with the energy within me. And so he kind of recomposes himself and then goes up and is like, I'm Avatar Roku, kind of trying to introduce himself to the waterbenders. But the second they see him, they attack. And it's like Ulo did to Malaya. Out of nowhere, suddenly, boom, no water, ice, water, ice pulled from the air, basically. He couldn't even finish his sentence before he's frozen in ice, basically. But Roku responds, and he does his first, like, truly enhanced attack here. And of course, he's not used to going full power with this much energy, so this is super interesting. Roku flared with a sudden burst of sapphire flames that evaporated the ice and radiated outward like a shockwave, knocking the waterbenders down. Roku's breath hitched. He'd never generated fire so hot it burned blue, and he had only meant to free himself, not to harm them. So he's just done a standard defensive move to block and free himself, block this, but instead it's become this defensive thing. Yes, it's got him out of the ice, but then it's flared out, shockwave of blue fire, and has knocked everyone in the room down. Really crazy power. But also, without even meaning to, he has gone from bending normal fire to bending blue fire. So finally we get this like super direct confirmation. We've always known this is basically the answer, but it's nice to have it in text here that yes, for sure, when you increase the power and heat of your bending, eventually it will change color. And so blue fire, that's what it is. So Azula, when she's bending blue fire, she is bending a fire that is hotter than typical fire, and that needs more energy and more control to keep it that way. And so Roku, just by having this power boost, has just naturally kind of been brought up to kind of blue fire level when he does a certain level of attack. That's super interesting to know, especially ahead of what we're kind of going to learn in the next chapter. But it's so cool to get this reveal here, and it makes a lot of sense that this is why, like in the Avatar state, the idea is ultimately that the Avatar theoretically is capable of performing nearly any bending move, especially the ones that maybe do just require power rather than just technique. But that explains quite a lot about things of this overall, I think. So really cool little detail there. But the waterbenders get back up and they start to attack once again. They began slinging high-pressured streams of water at Roku, and he's dodging. He's doing arcs of fire from his hands and his feet. It's like he's battling an octopus here, the amount of attacks coming in from every single angle. And it's just noted the idea of like, he turns one water jet or ice spear to steam, and it gets immediately reformed into like a new stream somewhere else. That's the power of these enhanced waterbenders, who absolutely know how to use their enhanced waterbending. Roku realizes he can't stay on the defensive for this entire fight. He's going to have to do something. But he's super cautious about just going all out, because he did one defensive move and nearly took out the entire room. He doesn't want to just casually do a powerful attack and like incinerate someone and accidentally kill someone. So he thinks to himself, okay, the only way to really do this is, I'm gonna try and raise the heat in the air to block this attack that's coming in. And I think I have to describe what this attack is. So one of the waterbenders also goes for a big move. One of the waterbenders reached up, swept their hands outwards, and then clapped them together. Fog poured through the wide crevice in the cave ceiling and condensed into 1,000 blades of ice that then darted towards Roku. So that's a crazy thing. Finally, the waterbenders are not just using what's in the air. They take from the fog outside, bring it in, so there's a bit more water in play here, and suddenly, boom, 1,000 blades of ice coming at Roku. And so this is where he decides, I don't think I can just target these things with attacks. I've got to just go for heat, go for melting. And so he's doing what he's never done before, trying to raise the air temperature high enough to counter it in that way. The cavern instantly turned into a furnace. The shards of ice evaporated, but the sudden spike of intense heat sent Roku to his hands and knees. His head throbbed, his vision blurred, and his insides felt like they were boiling. It was too hot to breathe, and he collapses. He tries to call out for help, but he collapses. And it's noted that just before he goes down, he sees that they've also collapsed as well. So he's almost done something even worse here, and highlights the idea of like, whoa, there's some really crazy things you can do with any form of bending when it's enhanced. So like heat bending enhanced is kind of crazy with what you can do, because like, how do you counter that? These enhanced waterbenders weren't really able to counter it. Like, you'd have to have, I think, a ton of setup ahead of time to stop a firebender just completely taking control using heat, basically. So kind of a potentially like quite heavily overpowered move here. Just the idea of if Roku had more control and could more protect himself from his own heat, which I think is the idea. If he trained with this, that probably is the case. But the idea of heat control at an insane level feels incredibly overpowered in the way certain other abilities do. But interesting ending to the chapter. Roku's unconscious, 3 waterbenders are unconscious, and they're in the sacred cave. What's going to happen here? Obviously, the suggestion is like, oh, it's going to draw the attention of other people, and what are they going to do? Like, the idea is effectively, to a certain degree. Okay, so the clan has sort of captured the avatar. What does that mean? We assume they know about the avatar. Do they care? That's an interesting outsider to have. That usually they kill outsiders, but it's the avatar. That's a very, very interesting kind of plot detail here. But super interesting chapter. That is the end of the chapter there with an interesting cliffhanger. So some very interesting reveals here, where we get better description of like what the natives look like to outsiders, giving us a sense of sort of the age of the clan, though it's still a little bit vague. But you definitely get the sense of super, super old, definitely going way back in history to like the formation of this clan to a certain degree. Finally, a proper description, seeing the sacred cave, revealing the source of this enhanced bending. It's not a technique that the people learn. It's literally that the cave itself is enhanced with energy, and the surrounding cave systems have a bit of that energy kind of leaking out into them. So it is a power boost exclusive to a specific location, but it's a very, very extensive power boost that, as Roku points out, if used by the wrong hands, could be devastating to the whole world overall. Some interesting details here about, like, say, Roku bending blue fire with his kind of enhanced energy here, accidentally as well, is fun. Seeing a little bit of a sense of what waterbenders can do with the enhanced power, And again, what they can do with enhanced water bending while still not having that much of a source of water nearby. That's the impressive part about this as well. And of course the plot setup is pretty good now of like, okay, Roku's in with the clan, we'll see what's going to happen here going forward. But yes, in the comments let me know what your thoughts are on a lot of the stuff that happened in this chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.